Evo, pozdravljeni vsi skupaj, jaz sem Izar in z mano je tukaj tudi že Emmanuelom Guibertom, ki smo ga zdaj že toliko časa čakali. Say hello, Emmanuel.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. It's really nice to have you after all this time. We've been really looking forward to having you. When you couldn't make it like a couple of weeks ago, I actually I took the advantage, and then when we already had the term, I read your and Joan's Les Olives Noires for people. I did like a simultaneous translation, and everybody was really happy. I think they all loved it. So it was actually a nice introduction to your work.
Thank you.
Bom jaz samo par besed vam najprej povem o Emmanuelu, vse verjetno zdaj, ko sem vam že skozi težil s temi Facebook zadevami, ste že videli. Skratka, v Sloveniji Emmanuela poznamo predvsem po Ariolu, ko ga izdajajo Dige Vage knjige, to je trenutno edina stvar, ki jo imamo v slovenščini, ampak ker je nameravano, da on pride jesen sem, naj bi izdal tudi Alanovo vojno, to je sicer Alanovo otroštvo, ampak skratka eno od teh knjig o Alanu, in naj bi izdal tudi Sardino v vesolju, še eno njegovo drugo otroško knjigo. Sicer je pa mogoče Emmanuel najbolj znan po Fotografu, da je to njegovo tako najbolj nagrajevano delo mednarodno, o enem fotografu, ki je bil v Afganistanu, ravno takrat v njih ključnih 70-ih. Trenutno je pa tudi nagrajenec Angoulema z veliko nagrado in ima tam zdaj eno ogromno razstavo, kateri katalog je to, in to je nekaj krasnega, ta katalog blazno priporočam. Njega je posodila prevajalka od Alanove vojne. O ostalem bova pa zdajle z Emmanuelom kar uživo spregovorila. Okay, that's all for the introduction, Emmanuel.
Extraordinary, you have everything.
You understood everything, I imagine. Oh, I heard you have a Slovenian friend, right? Michael James Plautz that you mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. We can talk about him later if you want, because I guess he deserves some sort of long introduction. But I dedicated to this man a book, which is not a graphic novel or a comic book, which is, I don't know how to say it. Let's call it literature. And it's been published in January. And this man's exactly. Wow, you definitely have everything. This man's grandparents left Slovenia at the very beginning of the 20th century for America, and especially a place in Wisconsin, which is like some Slovenian settlement there.
Yeah.
And later on, he lived in Minnesota and in New Mexico. I know he still has family in Ljubljana.
Okay.
And one of my ideas, if I finally make it to reach you there, is to maybe organize with you some sort of exhibition which would allow us to show some of his sketches, because what really put us together as friends was our mutual practice of sketching and what I call observation drawings.
Those sort of sketches when you go out around town and sketch stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
He practiced that as an architect because he was an architect. So his sketchbooks were mainly packed up with buildings, palaces and castles and etc. And mine instead are generally full of persons and a lot of trees, because I like trees. But we had this in common, and it's been the beginning and the birth of a short but very intense friendship that led me to join him a few days before he died, because he wanted us to make some sort of ceremony in which he would make his final drawing, because he wanted to say adieu to this activity which had been his during his whole life. And so we've done that together, and that's one of the topics that I treat in my, well, let's call it a novel, even if it's non-fiction.
That's the first thing you've ever written that has no pictures, as you like to say in France, like strange books with no pictures.
What an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first thing. Yeah, because it wasn't the first time for me to write, let's say, literature sketches, but I used to put them inside some books. I don't know if you have them, but they are. You showed some books. I can show them too.
Exactly. That's the best thing about doing this from home. That like people can just show it.
Exactly.
Go nuts.
I'm thinking about this one, for instance, which is a book. The title says, "Oh, it's called Italia." So it's a book of hundreds of sketches about Italy. So in this sort of books, I've published something like 4 or 5 of them. I generally introduce some texts, not in the comics form, but they are like some sort of captions or that are put beside the drawings to lighten the signification, the meaning of some of them, to add some I don't know, some ideas, some comments about the day when the sketches has been done, the place
I never
where
saw
I've made them, etc.
It's a collection. It's like a diary of little essayistic notes combined.
It's like a diary, exactly.
Wow, really nice. So yeah, maybe let's get like to comics like for a while. So we won't. So we give people something that they know to hang on to. And I thought maybe I start like the thing that like because usually like now in Slovenia people know your name mostly from Ariola. You know, this is the only thing that's published by you so far. Like we plan, if you come over, like even if you don't come over, we'll publish La Guerre d'Alan in autumn, and also a volume of Sardine de l'espace. But currently, like Ariola is what you're known for here, which is, now that I've examined like all of your opens and so on, you don't have a lot of children's stuff. Lots of your stuff is like very like philosophical, meditational, and so on. And then you have these few children's gems, which are just completely different. And Ariola is wonderful, just like, and it's a big hit here. It's like 7 books are already translated, and the children are loving it. It's the first French comics they've got since Asterix, you know? And it's lovely.
In my opinion, it's even much more philosophical than the rest.
Okay. That's even better. If you can be philosophical for like really, really concrete situations, like in Ariola, that's even better. Exactly.
But indeed, I have worked for children for a very long time now. If you consider that Ariel is going to be 21 years old this year. Well, he's always 9 years old, and between 9 and 10 in the stories. But we started the whole thing more than 20 years ago. It's like Sergeant Pepper. And even older is Sardine in Outer Space that you mentioned first, Sardine de l'espace, which is a story that started something like 25 years ago, or to 23, something like that. And I mentioned this because it's just to say that I've always been interested in really writing for children. And I couldn't imagine doing this job without dedicating part-time of my life to children. So that's the case indeed. I'm writing for children every month. I've been writing for children every month since 25 years.
All right,
so that means thousands and thousands of pages.
Time as like, Sardine de l'espace was like a monthly thing, right? That came out in a magazine.
Yeah, Ariola too. It's the same.
How with Ariola is the same?
Yeah, they are series. So I have to work every month. Even I don't have the right to have no idea or not to be in the mood. I have absolutely to find something to come up with something to say. And I must say that that's a very good training, first of all, for cultivating ideas, but also as some sort of workshop to teaching myself how to write in general. I mean, not only for children, but before writing for children, I guess everything I used to write was almost unreadable, very complicated. And
yes, because like children's stuff sort of grounds you, you know, it gives you like because I'm a philosopher myself by education, and like lots of stuff that I write is like it always veers into the conceptual, you know, too much because I'm a philosopher. And now I'm doing my first children's book, which is like a bunch of stories that I've been telling to my own kid. And I saw that he really grounded me, you know. I couldn't fake it with him. I couldn't go into philosophy at the crucial moment. I have to tell a story. And it is nice. Like I never imagined working for children, but it does ground you.
Yeah. And as you said, being nailed into the story, being stuck into the story without the right to go outside, that's the place where you really were a philosopher. Because children between, I don't know, it's very early in their lives, between 3 and 10 years old, I guess it's really the blossoming and the paradise of philosophy in everyone's life, because that's the moment for the real questions. That's the moment when your children ask you generally the questions to which you cannot answer. It comes very early in their lives. You realize we forgot it for ourselves, but realize it when we have our own children, and realize that when they come to us at the age of 3 and ask us about life, death, and well, all the essential questions of life, it's really the moment when they do it straight. I mean, with a way that you cannot escape an answer, and generally this answer you don't have it. And that may be the first time when your child realizes that his father or mother is short in answering, because we don't have we have to say we don't know.
Yeah. Although I really enjoy it. Like as a philosopher, I love those questions, and I just keep telling him stuff. So when he doesn't want to go to bed, you know, he just knows he has to ask me a really tough philosophical question, and then he can be awake for another 20 minutes discussing it.
That becomes a trick. Yeah, perfect. Well, but indeed, what I wanted to do when I started those 2 series, the first one, Sardine, was for the characters, a creation of my dear friend Joan Sfar. So he came up with this range of characters that he had drawn, and he had named most of them. It was like the characters for a theater play, but he didn't have any story, which, if you consider that he's one of the persons I know who writes the most, he's like a fountain of stories. It was strange for me. Yeah, exactly. We can see them. It was strange for me that he didn't have any story for these characters. So at the time we shared a studio in Paris. We used to work really side by side every day. So the story is funny. One day I heard him giving a phone call to a friend of his who's a great scriptwriter, asking him if he would write stories about Sardine for Joan to illustrate. And this friend answered, no, I just don't have time, and I don't want to do that. So Joan was quite disappointed when he hung down the phone. And I hate to see my friends disappointed. So I said, what about me? Maybe I can try. And I had never written for children before at the time, and I had no idea if I would succeed. But I felt I could at least try and see what he would give. So so I don't know, 1 or 2 days after, I came back with the first story, which I remember I couldn't even finish. So he helped me in doing so, and we started. And Sardine is maybe our most. Sardine is really a political story. It's about how power can be confiscated by evil persons, and the price it costs and the time it takes to recuperate this power when you are, let's say, a simple citizen. And so that's too seriously speaking the main topic of the story. The reality is that it's a completely crazy space opera, totally based upon the joke upon the words and crazy characters, foreign planets in the universe, totally invented. And I soon realized that it was a very convenient, fast, and accurate vehicle for all sort of ideas, and it gave me a sense of freedom extraordinary. And it's really with a great pleasure that during years and years I've written these stories, because every time in everyday life something would play on my nerves, would inspire me horror and hatred. I would instantaneously bring it into the Sardine's world and slaughter it.
Yeah, because they're very cruel, like it's Sardine.
It can be
like an enemy. Yeah, they always have an enemy, and they attack them and they destroy them completely.
Exactly.
You know, when I was reading this, because I was used to other children's comics, you know, from France. I was used to Ariola, which is like very gentle. Really, there's no like real bad guys. You know, even like the cat who like Ariola doesn't like is still an okay character and stuff. You know, and then there's like Petit Vampire that I love by Joan Sfar, which is like a wonderfully gentle but also horrific comic. And then I said, this is going to be great. This is like by both Guibert and by Sfar. And then I started reading it like in the English translation. And it's like, what the hell is this? This is just like cruel, horrible children doing horrible stuff to to innocent victims. What is this? but this was like...
Really, it was playtime. It was, for us, it was playtime. It was a playground. We had a complete freedom, I must say. We got along well with the publisher and had the right to go quite far in what we wanted to say. And we had really, I remember writing that down for really for having fun, and at the same time as something hygienic against dullness, against all sort of silliness of the contemporary world. And it worked very well, I must say. It's been a great relief during all this year to be able to punch in the face all the dullness coming every day on our screens, on our newspapers, etc.
You don't write it anymore now, right? Now Matthias.
Yes, but it's not the same rhythm. When we started, we were in magazines, so it was a monthly story, as you said. But now it's different. I write some of them from time to time. When the publisher wants a book, I write a 40 or 60 or 80 pages story, but it's not as regular as it used to be.
Okay, for me it was fun because like I first read, you know, like the English translation, and that I thought was just horrible because I thought it was just like horrible children doing terrible stuff. And then I read this Spanish one, which I somewhere got, and now I'm actually translating the French one, and I love them. I mean, it's just such a fine edge between this being just like cruel and being like extraordinarily free and fun. It like you really have to, I think, translate it well to get this sense of playfulness and not just cruelness. I think in English it comes off a little bit odd as just
maybe so. It's not that easy. Yeah. It's not that easy to anyway. It's never easy to translate, but especially maybe this series.
But like for me, it was so interesting because, you know, like Ariola is like, I think it's like an amazing study of how kids really are, you know? I mean, it's abstracted. You get all the types of kids you remember from high school or from your kids' friends and so on, you know, like the really cool bad guy and the sort of like slight social case who's a little bit, you know, and the single child who's a little bit spoiled and so on. And I'm getting an echo now.
No, that's okay. For me, it's perfect.
I'm getting an echo here, so we might the headphones.
For me, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it's annoying. I keep hearing my voice back. And I just thought this was lovely. And it's like a very, as I said, like very realistic, you know, very the sort of like when you read this to kids, it's like, wow, this is like my friends in school. And this is like a complete escapist fantasy. This is like what every child wants, you know, to go around space as a pirate. It's like a double fantasy, space and piracy with no parents. Just like a silly uncle
and absolutely no psychology.
Yeah.
Psychology is totally forbidden. But what I wanted to, when I created Ayo, it's like 3 or 4 years later after Sardine, I knew that if I would have to write contemporarily 2 stories each month, they absolutely had to be totally different, opposite. Because if they would have fished more or less in the same pond, I'm afraid when an idea would have come up to me, I would have thought, is it for one or the other? And I didn't want that. I wanted those words, those 2 worlds to be totally apart. So when an idea would come, I would know right on for which universe it would, to which universe it would belong. So that's the reason why they are like night and day. And having created first a story, as we said, no psychology, a lot of joke upon the words, total freedom to treat any week, every month, any subject that I would like to. On the contrary, Ariola, since the very beginning, was a story where hardly anything happens, totally dedicated to psychology, only about feelings, thoughts, dreams we have, dreams of and thoughts and feelings of children of this age. So, and what I don't know, of course, what you never know when you create stories like that is if it's just a universe in which you're going to dig for a few years and that will dry after a while and lost totally its fertility, or whether it's a world, it's an endless world in which during years and years you can that you can explore on and on without being tired of it, without being disgusted of it. But on the contrary, with this kind of comfort and pleasure that you have in life when you get to know someone and have the pleasure year after year to get to know him or her better and better. And like in the best friendships, never being really tired of each other. And knock on wood, but it's what happened until now with those 2 series. I'm always ready to write a story for one or the other. But of course, what I must add immediately is that it's never easy to write. It's always it's a hell of a job because I write, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 versions of each story before I'm quite satisfied with it. And I don't know why. I think nothing comes to me easily, but there may be also something very demanding in me, and it's the idea of my conception of what should be a quality story for children.
Mm.
And I mean, by saying that, a story in which what I would call some drops of truth have been poured like that. And I wouldn't like to let a story escape of my laboratory without the feeling that inside there is not only, of course, the amount of laughter that I want to, but also what I call these drops of truth. And by this, I mean something that will make you say, oh, yes, oh, that's it, that's like that. Oh, I understand this because I've been through this. I know this feeling. I've known this kind of situation before, etc. So I try to gather some sort of like I have in my mind some sort of list of everything that we have in common in our everyday lives. And that seems so mundane most of the time that we don't even notice it anymore. And it's the mundane things that we don't notice anymore that I, at any cost, want to put into light and try to express, and for which I try to create some scenes which are, I hope, as vivid and funny as possible.
Ah, cool. Okay, yeah. I mean, Ariola definitely has this sort of feeling. Like every episode is I think like nostalgic for our generation. You remember visiting your grandparents, chasing mosquitoes, going to a friend's house. It's like very much this, yeah, very intense, and it's interesting and stuff that doesn't change. That like even like my 6-year-old kid can totally relate to all of it. It's wonderful. I wanted to ask you, yeah, I thought it was interesting because like you like to collaborate. I saw that like Ariola, you did your own version. I only found this now in the catalog to your exhibition. There's a version in there of Ariola drawn by you of like the very first episodes. Was it ever an idea? Did you want to do it yourself at first, or was this just a sort of pitch when you were still looking for collaborators?
Yeah, exactly. No, I never really thought about drawing it myself. I just sketched it in the beginning just to search for the characters, and I, as a comics author, I have to see what I think. So generally, in one very spontaneous motion like that, I draw. Even before I have the name of the character, it's already on the page. So that's what happened, and that's the reason why we published in this catalog a few drawings
Do you
from
write
this
scripts for Ariola like that? Like when you turn them into Marc Boutavant to draw, do you send him like typed stuff, or do you draw like little storyboards?
So as you said, we'll take advantage of the fact that I am at my desk, so I can show you, because I've just finished yesterday writing an episode. So the first thing, it has nothing sexy. It's only pages and pages of writings like that.
Okay.
Not an image. It's just the words that come to me. But this wouldn't be readable by my partners. So I have to turn it into storyboards. So storyboards are different. On those, you already have the balloons in which the characters speak. And you have some drawings also. I don't know if you see them well.
Ah, yeah. Now this is nice. Yeah, if you put it closer.
Yeah, and things like that.
Ooh, show us some more. That's great.
Okay, so those are those are indications more or less precise for Marc Boutavant, who's going to receive them and turn them into the pages that you know. But the one who invents, creates the story, must of course give as many clues as possible to the partner, so all the meanings, the obvious meanings and the hidden meanings in the stories are, first of all, well understood by him, so he can transmit it to the readers. So that's the reason why on these pages, not only the balloons are written, but also a lot of indications like that, which are the kind of didascalias that the playwriters are writing down on the plays. So I'm searching for the word. The man who puts the play on the scene in the theater.
Yeah. So the director usually, or
the director, let's say the director. So the director can direct the actors properly, following or not, if he decides not to, but the conception of the author. So that's the reason why those scripts are very long to write. First version, the one you saw in the first notebook, is only for me, only the words. And then there's a second version, which generally takes me a whole day to write down, and for 10 pages. And it's a version in which I indicate everything that I see in my mind, so the artist is able to understand it first and then treat it his way.
Okay, you
Because
write
it's
down
always
the expressions, or like they're in a place that's a little bit shabby, like paint is falling, stuff like that.
Everything which is important.
Oh, cool.
Everything which is important, and everything which has meaning, everything which has taste in the story must be written down first, so I know that the artist will translate it in his own language. But of course, it's always a surprise when the actual pages come back and when the work is finished, because although my partner follows very faithfully generally everything I say, of course it never exactly looks like what I've imagined. And it's part of the great pleasures of this work, because it's like exchanging letters. Every month I send my script, he sends back his drawings, and everything that he brings, which is, with someone of his talent, of course, a great amount in the final result and in the success of the series. Everything that Marc adds to my stories with his drawings, and especially I would say with his capacity of turning the characters into real life beings. I really think, I myself, when I write, think about them as if they were alive. But when I receive the drawings, I can see that Marc has added, for instance, in lots of images, some little characters that I didn't even ask him to add, and everything that he adds in sceneries, in landscapes, in all the aspects of this everyday life in the little town where they live, nature, during the summer when they go, as you said, for holidays, visiting the grandparents, and this this landscape of seashores and pine trees and sand and etc. It's a huge amount of poetry that he adds to those stories.
That's wonderful.
And
working in tandem, that's a great thing, because you can like you can really climb onto each other, you know, like everybody adds another layer, and it comes up even more cool. Yeah.
Indeed, we appreciate a lot to climb on each other. And well, it became a very important friendship, the one between Mark and me. And I say became because when I proposed him to collaborate, we worked together in this studio, the studio that I mentioned before, but we didn't know each other very well, and we didn't look like each other. We don't have exactly the same age. He's younger than me. I don't know if we have exactly the same kind of interest. Maybe not. In a lot of ways, we are different, and that has been of a great help in our cooperation, because as I said, what he adds are things I wouldn't create myself. And part of the admiration, of the awe that I'm into until today, when I receive those pages achieved, comes from everything that he adds that I wouldn't have been able to create. Exactly, yeah. So and there's also the success of those stories allowed us to travel a lot, because we've been invited in different countries and in different places and etc. A few years ago, we decided with a friend who's a musician to turn Ariola into some sort of show.
Uh-huh.
And so I play guitar, and I've written some sort of songs about this character. Mark is at the same time is drawing on stage, and his drawing are projected behind me on big screens. So we have a lot of fun doing that.
That sounds really
we also created an animated cartoon for the TV, which has been also the occasion of cooperations with all sort of people. So this little universe, as it grew, gave us a lot of opportunities to make this friendship deeper and always more effective.
That's great. Because usually, like, I didn't really like working with people when I was younger, and I only started collaborating now in the past maybe 5 years, and it's been wonderful. I can't believe what I've been missing. It's just so much fun doing stuff with other people, and I think this is particularly why I got really interested in your whole French scene from the 90s. I read a lot about Rue de Vosges and the whole atelier thing, and I thought, wow, how wonderful how they were like really learning from each other, like through the 90s, like you and Sfar and Trondheim and Christophe Blaine and David B. And it just sounds wonderful. And in general, I think, like, I mean, it says it like your catalog, even like in good company, on Bon Compagnie. I think like you're one of the most sort of like people who just like to collaborate. Even your solo stuff is based on your friends' stories, you know, like Le Photographe and stuff by Alan. So yeah, I love this whole thing of like collaboration and being with friends and doing stuff that sort of emanates from you, and I mean from your whole scene, but I think from you in particular.
I must say I was like you in the beginning. I thought that the creator should be in his ivory tower, all alone by himself, and deliver to the rest of the world the marks of his genius. And after 6 or 7 years of this regime, I was totally exhausted and produced only shit. So I realized I had to change radically. And that's the time when I knocked at the door of this studio in Paris, Place des Vosges, which wasn't Place des Vosges at the time, but was soon to be. And I opened this door, and they opened it for me, and there were like 10 persons inside. I didn't know at the time, none of them. And they adopted me. And we spent 5 years together, which are among the most pleasurable of my life, as you can imagine, because it was like being in some sort of school without any teacher, except that every one of them was so gifted that each of them had something to teach me. And so we really had a lot of fun, first of all. But during all these years, I took this habit of being surrounded and working with others, and really melting the talents, for instance, one would write and the other would draw, but for the next album, the one who had drawn would write, and etc. We would change place, and everything that would appear to me prior as something solemn and difficult, and which had to be extracted from me in pain and blood and sweat and tears, became a game. Well, turned out to be the kind of game I used to practice in playgrounds when I was a kid. And it helped me reconnect with this very sane idea that all of this is a game. It has to be practiced as seriously, but as madly as we play when we are children.
Exactly, yeah. And it also needs to be practiced all the time. There's also like there's a discipline to the games, but it's also fun. Yeah.
Exactly. When you lose the discipline, you lose the fun. You realize that they're linked. You can have a short fun. You can have you can have a slight distraction for a short amount of time without discipline, and we all do that.
Yeah, you can have like a little carnival. You can have a carnival, and it's fine.
You can have a carnival from time to time. It's always good. But if you want to have real fun, you have to work at it. That's the secret. Except that you cannot call it to work. We are not working, and when we have the feeling of working, generally we're not in good mood, in good health. That there's a problem. Or we have to say yes to a commitment that wasn't for us, or commission that wasn't for us, or we are, I don't know, we are sick or tired or something. But it shouldn't be work. It's not work. It's really an incredible capacity that some very lucky beings in this life have to spend a whole life playing, a whole life in the playground with toys, but it's been so intense to do that as a child that it's the kind of intensity that you pursue during your whole life. You want that. You don't have it every day, of course. That would be lying to say so. But if you don't have it, you must at least have the reflex, or at least the will to search for it at any cost, because that's how we are fed, that's how we are nourished, that's how we have fun.
That's great. Yeah. And I think like in your case, I mean, in your hosting's case, like this working together really contributed to it, because it's much easier to be all sort of, oh, okay, I'm doing my dream job, but I have to work all the time, lonely in my studio and so on. It's much easier to feel sorry for yourself than if you're doing it with friends. You can really see you're having fun. That's great, despite this.
Yeah, like in games. Like in game. Yeah, exactly.
Again, a collective thing. Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a bunch of things, but I don't want to take too long. Let me see, because I want to open it up for okay, we can do about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to open up to the audience if somebody's going to want to ask something. Okay, I mean, I really hope that you'll be able to get here in the fall. We'll see. And if you will talk a lot about Guerre d'Alan, which is going to be out there, and about Alan Cope. Because I'm sort of counting on us talking about that later, I can now afford to ask you, about like the early stuff. 2 weeks ago, I told you I was reading people from Les Olives Noires, that you did together with Juan. And it's just such a shame that it's not a finished story. It's a great, beautiful story. I really enjoyed it. And I was reading it for people, but I think everybody's sort of obsessed with ends, like, well, it doesn't have an end, then it isn't even worth beginning reading it, And I sort of got used, mostly from French comics, that some stuff just doesn't end, and just enjoy it. It's fine. It doesn't end. You can still enjoy the ride. But at the same time, I'm really sorry not to be able just to read more of it. Even if it doesn't end, I'd love to read 2 more volumes of Les Olives Noires. But since this continued this series 15 years ago, I can't imagine that's going to happen. Huh?
We all agree that it should end. In fact, you're very kind in saying that, okay, there's no end, and that's all right with that. No, there should have been an end. But I don't know how. I have no really. I don't have any reason to give you to explain how we stopped and how come we don't have any end to this story. It's just that Joan has been so busy during years and years creating movies and animated movies and real acting movies and of course thousands and thousands of books, and because he's really a volcano, and that's I don't know, he dropped this series and time passed on. I myself started to do other stuff that were really absorbing, and I was completely into them, etc. Time passed, and every time we see each other, we discuss it. And I must say that when we part, he says, okay, I'm gonna write you some pages, and it doesn't come. I don't know if it will. I don't know if it ever will. I'm ready for that. If it comes, we'll find the time. The only thing I ask Joan is that if he writes a story, if he writes another book for Les Olives Noires, I want the whole book to be written before I start. I know he doesn't like that, but I can only start a story if I know that I can rush to the end without any interruption. And if I have to be interrupted during a year or two, it's going to be now, with everything that I'm doing, of a great disorganization in my life. So for my schedule's sake, I ask him to write a whole story. That may be what has paralyzed him. I don't know.
Okay, because like the first 3 books you were doing, that he was writing the story while you were doing it.
Yeah, but we were side by side at the time. I mean, we were sharing the same room. So it was easier for me to grab him by the shoulder and to bring him back to the table.
Yeah, I've run out of pages, like write to more.
Yeah. Now that life has parted us, because even if we see from each other from time to time, it's of course not as regular as it used to be. It's not that easy to keep on going, considering that he and I do so many things.
But do you miss that, like not working with people in the same studio anymore?
I wouldn't say so. I always had this idea that if I have to come back to this formula sooner or later, I can do it, because I've done it first. I've done it before. So I know the recipe, if I may say so. But I must say that when I left the studio after five years, it was for several reasons. I had met my wife, who at the time lived in Italy, so I had to travel a lot to see her. And at the same time, my friend Alan Cope, the one to whom I dedicate the series of book, was getting ill, and I also had to be by his side. And I remember a year which should have been my 6th year of studio, and that I spent almost I spent the whole time outside of the studio because I was busy with other things to do. So that's when I resigned and decided I would quit. And since then, I raised up a child. I've done so many things that made me appreciate the fact of working at home. And I don't know how to say this, but I think that when you have lived once this kind of experiment in your life, in a lifetime, you are never the same afterwards. This family is like inside you. Yeah, I mean, you bring it everywhere you hang your hat. And the fact of having the collaborations that you mentioned with all sort of different friends also made that I'm never alone in my work. I'm always exchanging about them with the stories that I'm working on. So I have some sort of crowded life, full of persons, and that's the way I like it. So I don't really miss the fact of not working side by side with others every day, because I realize I also need a certain amount of solitude and concentration, which is a very important point. Maybe not for everyone, but at least for me, I know I have to have a quiet time every day, which is a luxury. I mean, what are the works that allow persons to be in silence and by themselves, work at a certain pace, a certain rhythm, which is theirs? That mean going out to take a walk anytime you decided so, and visit a friend, and etc., and maybe working all night long if necessary. All of this kind of freedom I appreciated a lot, and that may be one of the deep reasons why I dedicated my life to this kind of occupation. It's also that it gives you this capacity of leading your own schedule exactly as you want.
That is true. Like, I mean, that's true. Like with all of these like creative professions, but it's like really nice to see somebody like admit it openly, because I think lots of people are sort of feel guilty about being artists, and then sort of in defense, just in advance, they're saying no, but it's really difficult. You suffer all the time and so on. Like, so no one will tell you that it's really actually a really nice life.
No guilt. The impression of one of the highest privilege, and it really the knowledge that because I've experimented it, that it's really the kind of life that I wanted to lead when I was a child.
Yeah, I was the same, but I was like with me it was very much connected to not getting up too early. When I had to get up early for school, like every day, I said, like, whatever job I get, like, please let it be one where I can sleep in.
I perfectly understand you. I perfectly sympathize, and the same goes for me. And there are tons of things that we can do because we work at home and we have when the COVID came and everyone had to go back home, and of course no one was trained to such a life except those who had always worked at home. And I don't know how many jobs are concerned by that, but we comics authors, we writers, we script writers, etc. I really had to realize that persons were masks in the street, and to see that something had changed. Because for my personal life, it's almost didn't change anything at the beginning, except of course the feeling that something huge was happening to us, and that it would change maybe the conditions of our lives, and as it does.
So I mean, you don't usually like go out a lot and hang out in cafes and stuff like that?
Yeah, I can. Yes, of course I do it, but yeah, a Parisian that wouldn't appreciate being sitting in a cafe or on a terrace wouldn't. I guess that it doesn't exist. But and our cities, I guess it's the same. I don't know how, if Ljubljana is really in a strict.
I mean, Ljubljana, like, the cafes have been closed for a really long time, and because I really like going to cafes, that's really annoying me. But then we can get takeaway coffee and just sit at the bank of the river, and it's fine. But yeah, the sort of like the cafes, the sort of hanging out with friends, that's been missed.
Yeah, same for us. But for the rest, being at home and working it's always been my part except during this period in which I was at the studio. So we know how to do.
Before I turn you over to the audience, I just wanted to ask you what you're working on now, if you have any new projects.
Well, as always, we are jugglers. If you want to make a living out of this kind of job, it's except if you're universally successful with one series or something like that, you have to share your life between different projects and contemporary projects. So currently, beside the series I mentioned, which are Ariola and Sardine, which are monthly works, I want to dedicate another book to Alan. Okay. So I have started now to work on the script, and it's a book about his teenage. Because I've dedicated a book to his war. I've dedicated a book to several books to his childhood. But there's some sort of gap between the death of his mother when he's 11 years old and the moment when he's enlisted in the army and goes to Europe during Second World War. And this 7 years gap, I'm going to fill it with the next book about him.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, that sounds interesting, and it's beautiful. I love the way Alan is drawn. Especially like I just now, because I only knew Alan's War, and now I was reading like Alan's childhood, and there's some beautiful stuff, wonderfully drawn. And I was always amazed because like I at first I got to know you as a script writer, because a couple of years ago when I was in Angoulemu, I saw you got the prize for the best script writers, you know the Prix René Goscinny. And I knew you were like the script writer for Ariola, and I said, okay, this guy is like mostly a script writer. And then I figure out you were like really one of the best like technically draughtsmen in the Studio de Vosges, and now you're completely like renowned as a script writer. Very interesting. But you have beautiful drawing styles, and lots of them.
Yes, I guess I don't have what you would call a style. I'm always eager to write and to draw with all sort of different tools.
Pages from here, so they see how many like different things there are in here, and different sort of styles and everything. And some stuff is painted, and some stuff is drawn, and some stuff is stylized, and some stuff is very impressionistic. It's just like very, very, very sort of different stuff. It really impressed me.
Yeah, I guess one shouldn't do that if you want to be identified easily by the public. But it's I'm just made like that. I mean, I've always enjoyed searching in different directions, and technique is something which is interesting for me as a field of research, and once again as a field of game, as a playground. So I use a lot of tools that are generally, even tools that are not conceived to be drawing tools. I don't know if I can find here. This, for instance, is the kind of dropper that you put in your nostril when you have a flu. And I draw with that. I carve my own tools in wood and etc. And because that's fun, and because the results is unexpected. And
yeah, I think somebody told me they saw this video on YouTube how you draw some stuff, which I think was connected to this dropper, where you draw something like with water, and then you add ink, and then it just appears.
yeah. Those are games. And I must say that I'm excited not to know what I'm going to use for the next book. And even when I write the script of a book that I'm going to illustrate myself, I prefer not to know how it will be when it's going to be my turn to draw. When I write a script, I really write as a script writer for I don't know, a complete foreigner, someone I don't want to know. And then I give the script to him and the other me, and I say, okay, just do as you can, because I haven't written for you. I haven't written to facilitate or ease you the way. Some pages are almost impossible to illustrate, but you'll manage. You'll see what you can do. And then the artist arrives, and he's the one who has to deal with the script. And that's the moment that I appreciate, because it's an uneasy one. The moment when I have to choose the technique that I may use during 2, 3, 4 years, because some of these books have taken a lot of time to be achieved. So it better be the good technique. Because if you spend 3 or 4 years with technique which is lousy for you, which is boring, which is it's terrible. And if you have done too many pages before you realize it, it's too late to change. So that's the reason why the beginning of each project is so interesting, is that at the edge of it, I always dedicate a time to some researches to find something that is going to be interesting and stimulating for me.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't just, like, I mean, if you have your own style and you're known for it, you just go, okay, I'm just going to do this in this style. I'll use the same tools. Oh no, they've run out of those nibs that I've been using for 20 years. That's terrible. But this way, it's much more fun for you.
That happens, but it's not a drama for me. Because I can always change. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, I'll give you over to the audience now, because I see there's a couple of questions that have already popped up. So, Emir Pashanovic, a friend of mine from Sarajevo, is asking if you have someone outside of France that you want to cooperate on a project.
Well, I must say that the books we mentioned, about the book about Alan, the book about Michael James Plouts, this friend of mine from Slovenian origins, they are books that I've decided to make because of meetings. Because by chance, one day I've been introduced to these persons, or I just met them. Alan is someone I met by complete chance on the street, asking for directions. So I must say that I'm always ready for that. And but generally those persons, they are not from my field. They are not comics authors, they are not illustrators, they are not... because the reasons why I collaborate with them is friendship. So friendship has to come first. Seduction has to come first. I have to have a special interest in someone to realize that, for instance, which is very important, I admire this person. I have to feel admiration. And if I do, I know I can dedicate years to these persons. So to answer the question, I don't have some sort of fantasy or dream or of a fabulous illustrator or a genius scriptwriter like, I don't know, Alan Moore, or with whom I would like to cooperate. My way is to meet persons, to have the feeling that we get along very well, and then to propose to do something together.
And this actually sort of answers another question from another friend, from Janis Priešner, who started organizing these evenings with me together. He says, I have a Gerd Alan question. You really get to love Alan and his humanity when reading the books. Did the meeting and friendship with Alan start the idea for the books, or was the idea to do a biography already there before and Alan found his way in? So I guess that answers this question as well, mostly, huh?
Exactly. So that's the first answer, which is being in the streets of a city where I've never been before, on the 16th of June, 1994, and passing by a house in front of which a man was sawing wood, and asking him for directions because I was lost. And the answer took 15 minutes because we were already attracted by each other. I mean, I think he was interesting, and seemingly think that, I don't know, I inspired him some sympathy. And that's how it started. So during a few days, we had interesting conversations. but very quick came a special circumstance, which has been being together on the beach, and we took a bath, and we swam a bit, and then for drying we walked along the ribbon of the waves, and that's the day when he told me the first episodes of his war.
Mm-hmm.
And it took, I don't know, something like 30 minutes or 45, but at the end I was, during all this process, I was so interested in what he was saying that at once I felt we have to make books together. And I remember him saying we have to go back home because his wife was there, and he was the one who cooked in the house, so he had to cook for the dinner. And I said, okay, but would you like to make books with me? And very simply, in a very straight, direct way, he said, yes, why not? Let's discuss that. And so I said, I guess the best thing to do would be to tape our conversations. So I remember buying a tape recorder the day after and starting like that, as naturally as that, as simply as that.
Mm.
So we would have appointment every day in the little shack that he had at about a kilometer from his house, and drinking beers and starting taping those endless conversations between us, and it lasted 5 years.
Wonderful.
And that's this intellectual and sensitive seduction that I felt when I was with him, the kind of pleasure that you feel when you're really interested in someone.
Mm.
You are curious.
Yeah, I mean, like the way I guess it's like the miracle of art, because like you were really fascinated with him and you really transmitted this fascination through the books. Because like for me to read La Guerre d'Alan, I read it like 2 years ago in New York when we were there for like this residency thing. And like both me and my friend who were there, we both read it one after another, and we were both so touched by it. We were both like, I was like crying at the end of the book, which I don't usually do. And it's just like completely moved and shaken. And now when we're doing the translation, like the girl who's translating it is also like completely in love with all of his opus. Like lots of the books that I'm showing here are her books. She has like all of your books. And now when I was like editing her translation of the second book, I was already like tearing up at the end of it, and there's all these beautiful scenes at the end of the war where the little German gets run over and he almost dies under the wheels of the car. And then there's this beautiful scene with the very young gypsy girl, and just completely amazing. And it's so amazing to just listen to him. Such an interesting, strange guy. The way he sort of just perceives life very without a lot of prejudice, and very subtly and very sensitively. Like it's very interesting to see.
Yeah, you said it very well. Thank you for him. It's both simple and powerful.
Mm.
There's some sort of evidence. There's some sort of it's like the voice of truth that some persons reach in a lifetime because they are experienced, because they have seen a lot of things, because they have thought, of course, because and I stop here with the because there's no because. It's just a person who was like that. And I appreciate the fact that you understand the kind of seduction he had, because of course my aim when I created those books was to put you in my shoes. I mean, you had to be at the place where I was. And indeed, at the end of the third volume, the very end of the book, the 3 last pages are in color. and they take place in the shack in which we used to have our conversations. So I don't say it in the book, but in the end, I invite the readers to come out into the garden, to walk to the little cabin, and to open the door and go through it and sit in the end at the place where I used to sit when I was listening to him. So I don't say it, but it's like I don't even know if the reader guesses it, but it's like an invitation to see in which place all of this has been said and heard.
Wonderful. Let me see. Another question also by Yanis is that he saw that there is a CD, La Musique d'Alan. Is this a kind of a soundtrack to the comic?
It is indeed. It's it's one of the most beautiful presents that has ever been done to me. 3 years ago now, or 2 years ago, a friend of mine who's a jazz producer invited in the south of France 3 American jazz musicians, 2 men and a woman, and 3 French jazz musicians to gather there in the studio and to perform a music that they had separately written, but with the idea of playing it together. Of course, it was a very delicate idea to mix up American and French musicians, if you consider that it's a friendship between a Frenchman and American one. But for me, the most beautiful thing is that they allowed me to be there during the week it took to tape this music. I was inside the studio with them. I could sketch, and indeed I can show you maybe some of the drawings.
Okay.
I'm back in a second.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know if you see. So this is Philippe Mouratoglou, the guitarist, and you have here the clarinet player Jean-Marc Fols. Stéphane Oliva on piano. Can you see?
Yes.
Does it make any sense if I show you?
Yes, but I don't want to express my joy too much, because then the camera switches on to me and the audience. Just a second.
This is Peg Carruthers singing. Bill Carruthers on piano. Matt Turner on the cello. So that gives you an idea of the paradise where I've been during this week, because they really had something like 1.5 years to conceive this music after reading the stories.
Okay, that's the idea. They read the novels. Okay.
They had read the graphic novels, and so all the titles that they had given to the pieces were titles of some of my chapters, or so they were directly linked to the story. Peg has sung the kind of songs that Alan's mother would sing him when he was a baby. She has read in one of the pieces. She has read Alan's poetry. So I could feel, even though Alan has been dead for 20 years when all of this happened, I really could feel the I must say, the joy that he felt being turned into music 20 years after his death, because he was a melomaniac. He was really someone who had a fabulous crush for music. I say it in Alan's War, when he is military training in Fort Knox, and he opened the door one evening and he finds himself in a music room, and that's the place where he's going to discover what he calls great music. And so there's, for instance, a piece in this record which is called The Music Room, and you can find it on YouTube, and you can see the musician performing, and it's been an intense emotion for me, extraordinary.
Wow, cool. That's great. They told me I don't have to be so quiet because they put us both on video. Okay, that's good. I was pretty afraid of saying anything because like you were showing great stuff and I was like, wow, and then the camera switched over to me. But they put us both on video now. Let me see some more questions. Emir Pashanovic, my friend from Sarajevo, who was asking you about the collaborators, wrote back, seduction has to come first. I love that. And then let me see. And a young kid who's a big fan of Ariola wrote that he wants you to do more of the kid with the hood who does the graffiti. So more of the kid with the hood.
Okay. Well, I must say we received tons of letters from children, and that's one of the big privileges of working for them, is that when they grow up, the queue in bookstores, when they have the right to, it's not the case now, but the queue in bookstores to ask you for drawings. But on the contrary, when they are children, they send you drawings by post. And I must say that the effect of these stories on children, and the way they say it to us, the way they show us how they like the characters, not us, because most of our readers, they don't really connect us with what we're doing.
Yeah, you're just a medium. You're just a medium.
Yeah, the person who exists the most is the character, even though he's a blue donkey with glasses, he exists. And we have. I'll spare you the tons of extraordinary stories I have with children, but since 20 years. We've had really magnificent experience with our young readers.
That's really cool. Let me see if we have any more. Okay, no, we exhausted the questions. That's good. I really kept you long today, Emmanuel. We usually have this like about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I heard that it's time for dinner. But if you have a last question, I'll be happy to answer it. But
they're inviting you. Your wife is calling you for dinner.
Yeah, it's my daughter.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's like a late dinner. You do that in France.
My wife has. I've seen that there are some pizzas on, and they are homemade and they're generally delicious.
Oh, that's great.
But as you like. You're the driver, Izar. So that
we'll say bye now, because it's also, I mean, I'm getting like really good feedback from the audience. They really like it, but I think it's good to end like on a not stretch it out too long. And I'm really counting on us being able to discuss stuff again in the fall. Let's hope so. Let's hope like the vaccine something happens.
Fingers crossed. Well, let's also say that if it's not this year, it may be another one.
Then
we'll
maybe
see.
Another one. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, for today, Manuel.
It was a pleasure.
Wonderful having you. And nothing, like have bon appetit with your pizzas and say hello to, are you in Paris or where are you?
I am in Paris, yeah.
In Paris. Say hello to Paris for us. And yes, and hope to see you and we'll chat and lots of love from Slovenia.
Thank you so much, Izar. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Takole, danes smo bili malo daljši, ker ste videli, da je res pač Emmanuel en tak krasen človek, ki ga je ful lepo pustiti govoriti. Tako da, ful hvala vam, ker ste bili danes z nami. Res upamo, da ga bomo lahko še v živo tukaj gostili. Njegove knjige trenutno lahko dobite v slovenščini, predvsem pri Guibertovih knjigah Ariola. Kmalu jih boste lahko dobili tudi pri nas, pri Stripolisu. In nič, res ful hvala vam, da ste bili danes z nami. Čudovit je Emmanuel in čudovite so njegove knjige. In se vidimo naslednjič maja, ko se pogovarjam z Vendi Vernič v okviru razstave Vodnikovi domačini in potem junija še za eno ful fajn mlado švedsko avtorico Romanovo. Skratka, vidimo se, pa upamo, da se štracune kmalu odprejo in to je to od mene, over and out. Čau!